to the Monday Motivation Spotlight, another episode bringing you an inspiring individual making a big difference in Israel. I'm Lesley Kaplan, and today our special guest is Yigal Marcus, and Yigal is one of those people that take action and make a difference. He's involved in different volunteer aspects in Israel, and after October 7th, where we all know what happened, him and his sister started an amazing initiative called Hinenu, where they brought in doctors from abroad, taking this whole operation into their own hands and then collaborating with others to make a difference and help treat those wounded and those needing attention in Israel. On the personal side, Yigal opened the office in Tel Aviv of Bernstein Private Wealth Management for entrepreneurs, executives, and families, where he helps them with financial decisions and is passionate about that in terms of creating greatness in each person and guiding them as a result. So sit back and hear the inspiring story and everything that Yigal Marcus is doing. So Yigal, I am so happy to have you as my guest here. For those of you that don't know, Yigal is one of the most Zionistic people that I know, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I think he was born with a Zionistic spoon in his mouth. So I've already told you what he does, and there's also a lot more to share what he does. I'll also just mention that I'm privileged to know Yigal personally, and I'm always so impressed with the way you come across and everything you do. So welcome to our Monday Motivation Spotlight.
Thank you for having me. This is my first podcast where I'm not sitting on the other side of the microphone. So this is very exciting for me.
Exactly. It's a different side for you. And I know you've also been interviewed, though, many times. You made Aliyah in 2015, and it's hard to believe you've been here. We're now 2026, that you've been here only 11 years because you're making such an impact on our wonderful Eretz Israel. So share with us a little bit, as a child, growing up in the New Jersey area, your passion for Israel. I know you did spend some years here in Israel before, and you had very Zionistic parents too. Tell us a little bit about those years.
Yeah, growing up in Teaneck, New Jersey, it's one of the really original modern Orthodox communities in the U.S. And my parents moved into Teaneck in the early 70s. They were the first 20 families, started a shul and a house. But when we grew up, I was born in 1975. When we grew up, my parents sent me to a Zionist Orthodox yeshiva day school called Moriah. And I remember when we had things like Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom Yerushalayim, it was a real celebration. It wasn't just eating falafel for lunch. It was the whole school was bedecked in Israeli flags, and we would sing and have programs. So I always grew up very Zionist and Zionistic, I would say. But my parents, especially my father, were very Zionistic. My father had a passion for Israel from the time that he became Orthodox in his late teens, early 20s. My parents visited Israel right after the Six-Day War, and my father fell in love with the country. He spent time working on a kibbutz, Shtei Eliyahu, up north, which was an Orthodox kibbutz, still is. So he instilled in us a great passion for Israel. My mom also did that with his pushing and his leadership. In 1985, actually, when I was 10 years old, we moved to Israel for a year just to taste it. And that year became 2 years. And looking back on it, I would say that those are the two best years of my childhood. It was just an incredible time to be here. They didn't have all the stuff. They'd have to bring tuna fish and peanut butter from America. So it was not easy living here, but it was great, adventurous. We were independent. As a 10-year-old, going on public transportation for 45 minutes a day and walking through the little streets of Yerushalayim to get to my school. So fell in love with the country at that point, and that bug never left me. And so when I had the opportunity to orchestrate coming to Israel with work, as you mentioned, I jumped in that opportunity, pushed it, and Baruch Hashem, thank God, it all worked out, getting me here, my family here, and it's been the very best decision that my wife and I ever made in my life. Except for picking my wife, it was the best decision that we ever made, bringing our kids and raising our kids po ba'aretz, here in the great state of Israel.
Wow, amazing. And yes, I agree with you. I happen to know and be related to your dear wife, so I agree with you that that's the best decision to be married to her, and the second best decision
25
to
years.
Aliyah.
Last week, 25th anniversary we celebrated.
Oh, wow,
So
Mazal, that's
thank you.
fabulous. That's fabulous. And I'm sure that your years as a child, as a 10-year-old, those 2 years that you said were just like awesome here, and having that independence a kid at that age does not have in many other countries abroad, that's probably what's just clinched the deal for you saying, I'm going to make Aliyah when I'm older. Am I correct?
Yeah, for sure. Growing up in Israel, raising kids in Israel is so different than raising kids in America. And I was a kid raised in Israel for those few years, so I tasted it. And so I wanted my kids to have that experience, and they did. And if you ask my kids today, like, you know, was it the right decision? They're like, Abba. You know you're successful when you turn to your kids and say, okay, summer vacation, do we want to go back to America to visit? And they said, for what? Now you know you've been successful. And it's not because America's bad, because it's really good here. It's really good here. With all
It's
the
really
problems that our
good
country
here. I
faces.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And your family's also done amazing things. And I think maybe I have to actually invite your daughter as a separate guest on my podcast. I think that would actually be a cool idea to do. I'm going to make a note of that afterwards. But your family has really made an imprint here, not just your immediate family, but also your parents are well known in the Anglo circles and also making a huge difference here. So Israel is definitely all for the better with having Mishpachat Marcus here. So, what I'd like to do before we start talking about what you do, and you manage the office here in Israel for Bernstein Wealth Management, Private Wealth Management, I'd like for you to share with our viewers the amazing stuff that you are doing also in a volunteer capacity. First, let's talk about we all had this big hit and a knock when October 7th happened, and what you did and what you started was just incredible. So, I'd like you to share with our viewers about that, and then we can move on to the other elements.
Sure. So I'm a big believer that we're all one family in Israel. There are times that we argue. There are times that we don't get along as well as we should, but we are at the end of the day a family. October 7th happened. It was terrible. Day like 9/11. I'll never forget it. Every minute by minute, I remember every single minute of that day. The following day, October 8th, I was on a phone call with my two brothers who happened to be in town. They had spent Sukkot with us celebrating my father's 80th birthday. And both are physicians temporarily living in Florida. We hope temporarily. Boca Raton. And I turned to them and I said, look, we may need volunteers. We don't, there are reports coming out early, tens of thousands of injuries. Obviously, a lot of people died. And so I said, would you be willing to volunteer? And of course, they jumped and said, of course, no problem. My wife heard that conversation and sent a WhatsApp message to her closest circle of friends. And she said, we may need medical physician volunteers. If anybody wants to volunteer, please have them reach out to my husband. And she put my phone number down. Boy, was that a mistake. My phone didn't stop ringing. And I realized after a few hours of this going viral globally that we needed to set up some infrastructure, which is when I reached out to my sister Eliana, and we built out the organization called Hinenu, which was a group of physician volunteers that were willing to come in, spend time here, volunteering in hospitals. We arranged getting their visas and all the credentials and credentialing that they needed in order to be able to practice medicine here. We brought in a few hundred doctors, about 8,500 doctors in a span of 10 days signed up through us. And
That is incredible.
that is
Incredible.
incredible. But it's not as much us as much as it is these people who saw a need amongst the mishpacha in Israel, and they said, I'm there. I'll come, I'll drop what I'm doing, and I'm there to help the Jewish people. And that to me it's very inspiring to see how people really stepped up and gave back.
Right, stepped up to the call, and we saw too, reservists, miluimniks, everything, as everyone says, and it's been spoken about so much, that it's the one country in the world where we're at war, everyone is wanting to come back. People
Correct.
are wanting to come back, and of course, not only residents, but in your case, many volunteers.
Yes, correct.
So share with us a little bit how that evolved.
We started, when the phone started ringing, I reached out to Eliana and I said, Eliana, we have to begin figuring out not only how to intake these doctors, but then how to credential them, how to make sure that they're legit, how to then reach out to the hospitals and the Ministry of Health to coordinate with them. And so we immediately set up the onboarding system, the intakes, the forms they have to fill out. We took that information, we staffed for probably 2.5 months in my living room.
I remember that, and family
long
making
hours.
sandwiches and everything just to keep the whole operation going, which is phenomenal.
We had at one point we were doing 30 people a day, and we had volunteers contributing. So we served lunch, and people were just processing. Not only the doctors want to send the information, but then we have to make sure that they did some due diligence to make sure that it's not the doctor who did something that put him in jail. Now he's out and wants to come back to Israel, come to Israel and help. We avoided those, and we found a few that did a lot of fraudulent things. So the work actually paid off, and then we started bringing them in and matching them with specific hospitals, specific units, depending on the need. And we kept doing that for probably a year, maybe even a little bit more. And at which point things settled down here. They didn't need the doctors anymore. And so we rounded up, suspended it, pending if God forbid we ever need it again. So we're actually ready to go again if it's ever needed, with all the information, all the credentialing already done, if God forbid.
Right, which please God, we will not need it again. But you're saying that the infrastructure, everything, so at the moment it's on pause, it's on hold. You have everything ready to go at the push of a button.
Like that.
In the case of an emergency. And listen, our wonderful country, and I say this, people who don't live in Israel often say, how can it be such a wonderful country when you have rockets flying over and everything? But there's just something, and I say this every time, there's just something in the air about living here, which is difficult to describe to someone who doesn't live here. But sadly, we know that things can happen and do happen.
Yeah, I remember sitting in my mamad this past Pesach. Through Pesach, we had missiles. And I remember having, before Pesach started, a few hours before Pesach started, we had missiles coming in. And I was sitting in my mamad, and it occurred to me that I actually felt bad for people who weren't in Israel, because you felt protected here. Yes, you heard the explosions over our house and it shook, but they weren't really falling, and they certainly weren't falling and incurring danger and death. That's a tremendous miracle. People don't realize, I did the work on this, the research. One ballistic missile that actually hits can take out a huge area. It would evaporate human bodies like that. The fact that thousands, between the first war and the second war, thousands of missiles and rockets have been fired. And for all intents and purposes, maybe a little bit of physical damage, but not the kind of damage that it could have done, is an open miracle. So when you're living here, you feel protected. And when
right,
not,
which is so difficult to explain to other people.
That's
correct. And listen, we won't undermine there has been damage. There were sadly people killed, but you are quite right. Is that the miracles
not the magnitude
that happened?
What could have been didn't happen.
Yes,
every building damage and every life loss is terrible, but we could have had tens of thousands of injuries and deaths, and it didn't happen.
Absolutely. We have someone watching us above, right? Baruch Hashem.
100%. 100%.
So moving on from that, you're also very involved in the OU in Israel. You're on the board for OU Israel, and also you're very involved. Did you say it was the chairman of NCSY Israel? Is that what it is? Did I get that right? Correct. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved there, your activities there.
Yeah. So NCSY Israel is actually started, and then they put me on the board of OU Israel. NCSY Israel is an organization in Israel that is under the OU, and our mission is our tagline is, inspired teens are tomorrow's leaders. And what we do, when you make Aliyah as a child or as a teen, you're immediately at risk. And it's hard to figure out, where are you, the teen? Where are you in this greater story of the Jewish people? What's your role? How can you give back? How can you become a productive, highly productive member of the Jewish people in Israel? And it's interesting, teachers and parents are not those that effectively can inspire their kids the way that peers and role models can, right? Kids always have a little bit of a whatever with their parents, and even teachers are teachers and around the students. And so the relationship is not such that is conducive to great inspiration. So
and we were kids too. We were teens too. So we know that there were years that we identified more with our peers.
Absolutely. So what NCSY Israel does is, literally, when you're from 9th to 12th grade, we have chapters all over the country in the 5 major areas and growing, and we inspire kids. We have role models who are fully paid, couples who have been through Army and Shirat Leumi, who work with the kids, inspire them, get close to them, and they become the role models that kids need, not to survive, but to thrive, to become that very productive member of society and ultimately to get back to their country with pride. One of the biggest things that teens face is this conflict between I'm an Oleh and I'm Israeli. And they think that in order to become Israeli, you have to reject where you come from, America or England or South Africa or France or Russia, whatever it is. We only work with Anglos for now. But people don't realize that rejecting where you come from is not healthy and not productive. You should embrace it because you have something very special that you can add to our greater society. And so NCSY Israel does exactly that. And thank God we've grown like crazy. We're reaching almost 1,000 teens per year. And that it's like a hockey stick in terms of our growth. We now have separate gender programming. We have Shabbatonim multiple times a year. We're in the big 5 Anglo centers in Israel and growing. And so I found that sort of close to my heart. It's of all the things that I do, I would say that NCSY Israel is the one that I'm most passionate about. Because if we can get our teens inspired, they will become leaders. And if we can raise the next generation of leaders, then we know that we're going to give our country over to great stewards of this amazing country that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us.
That's amazing. And it's so true because, look, you also know firsthand because you made Aliyah with 2 teens.
That's correct.
Two, yeah. And a younger son as well, but with 2 teens. And you've also had family where it hasn't always worked out here.
Yeah, that's very true. And the more you get ahead of it, the more this is not about trying to save kids as much as it's about to inspire kids. We expect more. If these kids will rise to the occasion, I see it day in and day out of kids who came in 9th grade, disheveled and lost, and left in 12th grade to go into top units in the Army, to Hesder Yeshivot, to Mechinot, programs preparing them for the Army. Girls who are coming in who are also lost, and by 12th grade, they knew exactly what Shirat Leumi, what they want to get back to their country. It was important to them. They draped themselves with that Israeli flag, proud to not only be living in Israel, but proud of the culture they come from and recognizing what they can contribute to our greater society. That is success. And now we have a new program at the OU, which once they're in the Army, we're there also, inspiring them with ongoing education, ongoing inspiration, and ongoing mentoring while they're there. And I think
that's fabulous.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. And the greatest thing is when they become, let's call it graduates, and become role models for the next level of kids, not even necessarily next generation, because they're still part of the same generation, but the next level of kids. And that is super, super important.
At the end of every year, I have a tish with the seniors at our last Shabbaton. We had it a couple of weeks ago in Masada. And I always ask this question. I say, if you can come back as an advisor to NCSY, how many of you would do it?
And they all put up their hands.
Almost all the hands when it go up.
Yeah, because it just shows how influential and the impact that it has made. And that's super important. And that's, I believe, also when you say about identifying and not trying to hide your values and what you're bringing in as an Oleh, but actually embracing it and seeing how it helps and helping the next set of kids come in as well.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So we've spoken about a bit about your childhood. We've spoken about life in Israel as a volunteer and doing other things. Tell us now what you do professionally, even though that is very professional, what you do. Tell us what you do in terms of helping families, helping individuals. And I'd like to, if you share what I saw on your LinkedIn profile and what you mentioned as well, how you got into this field and how you learned firsthand from it.
Yeah, I guess I'll tell a story. Everyone likes stories. I'm going to tell a story. I got married and I started a business. And I started a digital media business in the US and partnered with CBS as well as a big company called Henry Schein. And it had been doing very well. I got a phone call one day from the gentleman who I'm still very close to, who is effectively the chief marketing officer of the entire CBS, George Schweitzer. And George said to me, he said, Yigal, are you guys looking for an investment? Now, whether you're looking for an investment or not, when CBS calls you and says you're looking for investment, the answer, of course, is yes. So I go into CBS, their headquarters in New York City. They called it Black Rock, and sit in this big conference room. And in walks George, who I love, and behind him is a guy named Joe Iannello, who was the chief financial officer and then became the CEO of CBS. Perfectly slick back hair, tie. In those days, people wore ties. Tie, perfect, everything. He sits down and says, "We don't invest, we buy." And he put an offer in front of me to buy my company. I made the mistake of hiring an investment banker to represent us to try to extract a much higher price. And we went back and forth to try to get the highest price possible. I didn't know the impact of that potential acquisition on me personally. I didn't think about it. And we had a last meeting. At the last meeting, Joe leans over and he like this, and he says, Yigal, take the deal because you never know how quickly markets can change. Never forget that.
And we've seen that, right?
And that was 2 months before the global financial crisis.
Wow.
So I kept the company alive. We didn't do the deal with CBS, even though they were great partners. And unfortunately, a few years later, I kept it alive a little bit. A few years later, I had to shut the company down. We couldn't raise new capital during this very difficult economic period, and advertising budgets were sliced. Fine. At that moment in time, I decided to become the advisor for founders and entrepreneurs that I needed when I needed it most. Right before there's an acquisition, trying to think things through and ultimately build generational wealth for my family, which I didn't do at that time. And so I decided to come back to my roots. I had started my career at a company called Sanford C. Bernstein in 1996, left in 1999. I came back in 2010. And when I interviewed, I said to them, if I wanted to open an office for you in Israel to serve the entrepreneurs and founders and the amount of wealth being created in Israel, would you support me? And they said yes. And in 2013, I walked into the chief operating officer's office with a business plan that I had written, and I handed it to him, and I said, let's do this. And that started this whole journey and this whole adventure. For a year and a half, every month, going back and forth to the exclusion of everything else. And in 2015, that summer, I got a phone call, August 5th. They said, we'll move you. And August 25th, 20 days later, much to the chagrin of my wife, because of how
that was quite quick, even though you've been talking about it for a long time, but from the moment you got the green light to actually making it happen.
Yeah, 20 days. They took care of everything. So they packed us, they got all my visas, they got us a place to live, they took care of every single detail. It was fantastic. And I moved my family in August. We had a few months to acclimate. And then in January of 2016, I officially opened the Bernstein Tel Aviv practice, which serves both founders and entrepreneurs, but also global families, U.S. dual citizens in Israel and high net worth families.
Wow, that's incredible. And you are certainly, and we've seen it as well, and just from what our viewers have heard now, you are a doer. So when you want to make something happen, you make it happen, and you made that happen.
Thank you. You know what? It's a strange thing, and I've seen this so many times with people who want to get to Israel. If you really want to get there and you zero in and give it your all, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God is going to plow the roads. He'll make it happen. But you really have to want it. You really have to stick your neck out, and then it'll happen. I've seen it firsthand, not just with me, with my siblings, with others. Things happen that are not natural, but you really have to want it.
Absolutely. And look, I think that applies to so many things in life. And obviously, making Aliyah or moving any country, but especially making Aliyah is a classic example. The more, and the way I like to explain it when I talk to my clients or to my groups in terms of workshops and everything, if it becomes just everything, it takes over your, let's call it your body, your senses, you can smell, you can see, you can just feel what it's like doing whatever it is that you really want to do, in this case, Aliyah. Then yes, in other words, if the dream, if it's not fuzzy, if you have a clear path, even though you're not sure exactly which way it's going to go, that is what's going to make the difference. And you made that happen, not knowing exactly what the outcome was going to be. We all took that risk when we made Aliyah. We knew what we wanted. And as I say to many people, you had a bad day in the old country too. So, not every day is going to be a good day, but you have to see the good, not only see the bad, see the half cup full, and then you can make it happen. And I'm sure you agree with that.
I do agree with that. I think philosophically, I'm a big believer in mission. And I think that every single person created, when you were created and born, God said, I can't have this world without you. And so the adventure of life is identifying what is your mission and then pursuing it. And my view of it is if I'm going to, whatever the mission is that God gave me to accomplish, I'd rather do it amongst my people and give 100% of my efforts and energy to my people. And so that was part of the calculation in terms of making Aliyah personally. I just feel like whatever the Roshem, the impact I'm meant to make in this world, make it in Israel, because that's where your impact is going to be greatest. like impact
Yeah.
IO.
Yeah, absolutely. And Israel also, as we know, has one of the highest percentage of nonprofits per capita than any other country because just everyone has these ideas and is what they want to do. They want to make a difference.
That's it. Tikkun olam. Very true.
So moving forward, looking at your dream of really living here, your dream, which became your goal, dream, vision, look, moving forward, where do you see Yigal moving forward in a couple of years? Where do you see your life, your family, life in Israel? Share with us a couple of things that are going through your mind right now.
Yes, it's a very good question. And right now, business, thank God, is very busy. So that's great. I have very specific, I don't get into detail, but I have some very specific big ideas that at some point I'm going to pursue. I think that unfortunately, this war has had an impact beyond the actual war. There's been a great impact on our social structure and the trust amongst us and in Jewish pride and anti-Semitism around the world. And to me, I think the charge of our generation is going to be rebuilding Jewish pride around the world, and especially in Israel, but also around the world. The way that we fight off anti-Semitism is not closing our doors and locking them, but it's opening the windows and proudly showing the world, showcasing the world what it is that we're here for. Why are the Jewish people here? What motivates us? What our mission is as a people and individually, and to inspire people to do that. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done there. I'm very proud that I'm, of course, part of the OU Israel, trying to move those things forward. I do have some big ideas that will be coming in the next couple of years, I imagine. But we have a unique opportunity in history right now to take advantage of the chaos that has been created and to use it for our benefit. I don't want to use the word exploit it, but it really is exploit chaos, because that's sometimes where the greatest things can be born, the greatest paradigm shifts can occur. And if we can do this right, I think that the future of the Jewish people, especially in Israel, but really anywhere, is extraordinarily bright. We just need to have the courage to focus on our mission and not be afraid of what these haters around the world are trying to do to us.
Absolutely. So, in addition to what you've said, what do you say on a personal basis to friends that you have abroad, whether it's in the US or anywhere else, to your family there? The fact that some people say, yes, go out there, show proudly that you're a Jew, walk around with your Magen David necklace, put a kippah on your head, and that there are others that are saying, yes, you know you're a Jew, you're still a proud Jew, but cover up, just be careful, don't exploit too much. What is the message you give to your friends and family?
I think that weakness, insecurity invites anti-Semitism. We have to understand what it is that we're here for. We're not just a country. We're not just genetically bound to one another because we're Abrahamic nation. That's not what we're about. We're the Jewish people. We are the most accomplished people in the history of the world. We have created most of the major institutions, justice, as an example, but education, the idea of educating your children is a uniquely Jewish idea that the world learned from us. So by showcasing what we stand for, we're going to be fighting anti-Semitism in a way that they can't really respond to. Be a proud Jew. Do not hide. The way they're going to win this ultimately is by showcasing how special we are and how our goals are not only to make ourselves richer or stronger. The goal of the Jewish people is to be an or goyim. It's to raise the people of the world, to improve their lives, and to give back to the world around us. That's our mission. That's what we're charged with, and that's what we've been doing for 3,500 years. And so don't back down from that. Embrace it. This is a time to stand forward and say, no, I'm Jewish. I'm on a mission, and my mission is to make your job and your life better, healthier, more just. And that's how I think you're going to win back the hearts and minds of the people around the world who are being poisoned by these on social media. We have a very special story to tell. Tell it. Learn about it so that you can tell it, and then be part of it and understand what your role is in this great story called the Jewish people.
And it is a great story indeed. So as a final question, and I told you we're not going to be talking about politics, and we're not, because Yigal loves talking about politics, so you're not going to express which side of the coin you're on. Yeah. But do you have any aspirations in the future to get to the Knesset, be involved in the Knesset? Or you'd like to influence that a deep, dark secret that maybe you don't want to share with anyone? Before you actually answer it, I want to just say, without mentioning names, I interviewed someone a couple of months back on my Monday Motivation Spotlight who's very influential. She's amazing. And she said, people asked her the same question, and she said, as long as she can talk and say whatever she wants without being limited, without being in the Knesset, she'd rather make an influence from the outside and not feel she has to be in the Knesset just for a position if she can talk more freely and influence more from the outside. Where do you see yourself in terms of that without saying who you would identify with?
All right. So what I would say is this. I've been asked that question many times.
I have no doubt, which is why I asked it.
And what I'll say is this. I'm not someone who pursues and has a lust for power. My goal is to impact the Jewish people as great of an impact as I possibly can during the years that Kadosh Baruch Hu has given me on this earth. If opportunities arise where others believe that I can contribute and in a way that's greater than just Yigal sitting, we've got big problems. And unfortunately, one of the big problems is that it's the same cast of characters. No matter what your political opinions are, it's the same cast of characters. We do need new leadership. We do need a refreshing new future. I'm hoping that leaders will rise. If they don't, and then there's an opportunity, only he knows. But I want to get done before that. I have a lot that I want to get done before that. So hopefully the impact that I can make will be as important, if not more important, than sitting in the Knesset. But
you never know. One never knows what life holds. How can people reach you? Email address, URL that you'd like to share if anyone would like to contact you?
Sure. Personal email, yigal.marcus@gmail.com. That's yigal.marcus@gmail.com is best. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. I always help. Anybody reaches out to me, wants to talk, I always give them the time. And if they need help, if they need whatever, one of my policies is if you reach out to me, you're going to get some of my time. And so if there's something that I can help somebody with, b'simcha. If you're on the journey coming to Israel or in Israel and I can help, I'm very happy to do it.
That is amazing. Thank you so much. So we've come to the end of another Monday Motivation Spotlight. You've been listening to it. I'm Lesley Kaplan, interviewing my special guest, Yigal Marcus. Yigal, thank you for everything that you do for the Jewish people. And I've no doubt that you're continuing and will continue to do a lot more than what you've already done. Thank you to our sponsors, to Eggert & Cohen Insurance and to Lali's Flower Boutique in Jerusalem. Besorot tovot, as they say, and we will see you next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. Bye-bye.